Julia Schulhof from Hearst.
Okay, so I thought about this presentation and decided to do it from the perspective of what I think many of the people in this audience are. I can't see you, but now I can. As a producer, get me an app, but the truth of the matter is you probably know a lot more than you think you do already, just in your day-to-day production work. I actually started my career in mobile by doing 90-second news packages. I was working for an independent TV production company here in New York called Science Central, and we were producing for ABC and NBC local news. And this was 2005, and we were thinking about all the ways that you can make it once and distribute it through many different channels. And one of the things we thought about was mobile. And of course, there weren't too many outlets for mobile video at the time. There was Moby TV, ESPN had an MVNO, but most Americans were not watching video on their mobile phones. We knew there was a great promise there, and we also knew that in Asia and in Europe people were. So 2005, I saw an invitation from MIPCOM that there was a new contest for made for mobile video, and one of the sections of the contest was on repurposed video, and I thought, great. So I took these 90-second news packages, straight news packages, B-roll and intros and outros and talking head interviews with scientists, and I thought, what can I do that's going to be, repurposing of this that would appeal to people who are basically on a phone, want something to snack on, infotainment they can snack on. So I thought, okay, I think I'm going to do, something short and quizzy, and I grabbed an intern and we went into an edit suite and we came up with some stuff like this.
Scientists created these green-skinned glowing mice by accident. Are they A, resistant to radioactive poisoning, B, useful for studying embryonic stem cells, or C, a mutant strain that evolved in infrared conditions? Actually, they may be a new source of stem cells, valued for their potential to change into many types of specialized cells that might be useful in treating diseases. The green glow is from a gene
that is
in
a living mouse
jellyfish and inserted into the
that.
mouse's DNA. So scientists try to make only areas containing a protein that's produced by brain stem cells glow green. But instead, the entire mouse lit up green like a child's toy. Turns out, the brain stem cell protein was also in hair follicle stem cells. Scientists know that there's a link between the brain cells and the hair cells. The next step is to learn how to make the easy-to-reach hair cells manufacture brain stem cells. If this happened, people could one day become their own source of disease-fighting cells.
So you can see, I was the VO talent. We're not talking high production values. Yes, I had it right. I had another career before.
Are you after now?
Yes. Not high production values. You couldn't even press A, B, or C on your phone. But the idea was there, and we kind of thought about what the, as we would say, use case was. What might people find interesting? So anyway, quick sort of wrap this up. I entered the contest. It was free. And then sometime before MIPCOM, which is about this time, I guess, October, I get a call a few weeks beforehand from the woman who organized the contest saying, are you planning to come to Con? And I had no intent of going to Con at that point, but she said, you might want to come because you've been nominated for an award in your division. So I thought, great. So we were up against some heavy hitters, Sony, Disney, Spider-Man 2 or 3, whatever. And, I'm like, I'm going to Con. It poured the entire time I was there. And I thought, what am I doing here? But the cool thing was that in the end, we actually won in our division against some of these big companies. And the reason was the judges liked the fact that we, had thought about really something innovative. Now, again, it wasn't really, it was no Angry Birds, but it was kind of cool for what it was, I think, at the time. And kind of cute. And I called them brain food, and the idea was, you're snacking on infotainment. You can use stuff that'll interest you and inform you in a minute or less. So what did I learn from that experience? Well, I was following this credo of make it once and sell it thrice, the Disney thing, and I actually beat them at their own game, I guess. I don't know. You know your audience and how to engage it. I mean, I kind of repurposed these news packages that I had for ABC and NBC, and I thought about, you know, again, people want to learn something in a minute or less, so that's what, you know, we're planning to do. It's on a small screen, so, you know, I have there at the bottom, the video transcoding, of course, is a big issue. You know, we were having to do all sorts of different, you know, sizes, and everything had to be transcoded depending on whether it was for Asia or Europe. And that was interesting because I ended up doing a distribution deal, since I was VP of Business Development there, with a company in the UK that was doing mobile game distribution, and they distributed these pieces for us. So that was pretty much it. So at my next job, I ended up at Conde Nast, actually CondeNet, which was the digital side of Conde Nast, and I joined to do video distribution there as well, onto as many platforms as possible. And it's kind of blurry, but about the time I joined in March of 2008, Apple had been reaching out to Conde to ask them if they wanted to partner to do apps, iPhone apps specifically, for their new App Store, which was launching in July of that year. And, you know, really knew not much about it, but that I had done what I showed you for mobile. Had worked a little bit with a company that was doing location-based tours. I think Chris mentioned a similar company, you know, very much about, we were looking to get our science news videos into science museums to kind of augment the experience there. So when I got to Conde, as I was saying, Apple had reached out to us, wanted to partner with us on something, and I was thinking about, you know, what might we do with them, and Conde Nast decided that they wanted to launch an app starting with the brand Style.com, which is all the fashion shows, and so the timing was right. Style.com was relaunching its website. We were going to be doing all the coverage of the fashion shows in the fall. So in late August, which was about a month after the App Store launch, we launched this app for Style.com, which again is repurposing, reusing content that was basically all the video production that was Hearst. Was done for the website as well as the slideshows, and so, you know, it was basically a companion to the website and to that brand. And then, in addition, once I left Conde Nast, I ended up at Hearst, which, as Chris mentioned, is now part of Hearst. And when I got to Hearst, about a year later, they were starting to launch apps. And similarly, there were these. The idea was there were brand extensions. They were how do you stay with users throughout the day? You know, what we call utility applications. So for Elle, there's a shopping guide, which is location-based, and, you know, what Elle recommends in the neighborhood where you're standing, and if there are special offers, they ship those. In the middle is Woman's Day Cooking Assistant, which we work on the curious at Conde Nast. So similar idea, you know, cooking, best recipes, shopping lists. And this is Car and Driver, and it was all about reviews of cars. So again, you know, considering very much like, what is your business objective? Are you a companion to a brand or a series or a movie? The other important thing to think about here, which I learned a lot about, was, you know, what is your business model? Are you monetizing with sponsorship? Are you going to have ads? Are you selling to your end users, as we call them, so to the consumer? And the other thing I learned was, especially with the Style.com experience, was we put out an RFP and we got proposals that ranged from 40K to 160K. And at that point, no one had ever built an iPhone app. So we ended up hiring the 40K guys, who were, you know, 5 guys in a garage. And we did it because I think we just felt like, you know, the 160K was for a lot of kind of management layers that we didn't necessarily have. We had a good, strong production team. And it turned out to be the right decision. But and these apps for Hearst were all done, for the most part, with revenue share kinds of deals, where the app developer developed them, and then, you know, we shared the revenue in the back end. So you can kind of get creative about the money too, and I think that that's important. Think about what your budget is. Do you need to own the code? I mean, at this point, you know, unless you're a big company, and frankly, at a big company, you know, generally, you know, they see you coming and they come to you with these huge budgets, and not to be rude, but that's what we get a lot of. And, you know, the truth is we're not necessarily going to have those budgets. So, you know, make sure you know what you can afford, and do you need to own the code at this point? You might need to find licensing code, but if you're doing that, if you're licensing software as a service, which is SaaS, Is it a price that makes sense for you? Are you going to actually break even or make any money at the end if you're continuing to pay for something? And then again, are you paying for layers of management and do you don't need to be? So after I left, the next step after iPhone apps was, as Bradley's been showing, iPad apps. And this is L, just to give you a little glimpse of it. This is the first iPad app I worked on. This is a symbol reel for the app, but you can see where we went from kind of simple to this is very interactive, lots of video, lots of interesting things to do, shop off the app. Put out this send it to your friends. Get some inspiration for it. So, that was that came in 2008, and we launched that at that time, and subscriptions earlier this year. And then the ads, whereas the ads in the other utility app were straight banner ads, and what you had here, and this is Digitas built this app for Gucci in our iPad. Really nice. You can shop off of it. You can, look at that particular bag. Let's see what it used to look like when it was 2011 in the 1960s. Pretty cool. Nice execution there. And at this point, I guess, what I would say as kind of my takeaways here are all those same things. I mean, we're repurposing content. Obviously, that's a lot of largely magazine content. I should mention that, again, if you're repurposing things or if you are going to be creating stuff fresh for what you're doing, then make sure you have a budget and it's scalable and it's sustainable. The L Shopping Guide, was a great idea. Problem was it didn't have a lot of support from the brand. And so, if you don't have enough editorial people or people on the ground who are going to be writing fresh reviews of shops or whatever it is that you're going to be doing, you have to think about that in advance. So, production process, like how you're getting from whatever content you're producing onto these devices is paramount. And then does it scale? And, we're working mostly with iPad because that was really the first market that we could sell with any great consistency in numbers. But then we have Amazon Fire, and Color. What I want to point out is the device size is different for each one. The resolution is different from one to the next. So you have to think about all of that in your production process, and it is a pain. And going from iOS to Android, anyone who tells you just press a button, it's like easy to tie. And so far, no one has really figured that out to make it that simple. So this is my kitchen sink slide. Really quickly though, in terms of technology, you might want to know, and we'll probably get into this in the panel, but what a native app is versus a web app. Do you need a native app? If you want to put it in an app store to sell it, certainly you do want to have an app that's built using the SDK, software development kit from Apple or Android. Web apps, can't be submitted. There are some pros to them as well. Some markets are better than others. I mean, I talked about distribution channels early on when I was talking about my first foray into doing made for mobile video, but the relationship that I built and some of the other folks on this panel have with Apple is critical. If you get in the ground floor and you put some skin in the game and you're an early adopter, they appreciate it. Especially for brands like us, I think that it's an important point to make. Some markets are better than others. SEO in these markets tends to be, Chris mentioned there's 1 million apps. So if you're competing with all those other apps, so you have to think about how are you going to promote this outside of the App Store? If you're not like Bradley App of the Week, how are you going to get attention? How are you going to get downloads? Those are all considerations. Design considerations, 1 or 2 aspect ratios if you're going from iPhone, iPad, and iOS. With Android, then you're dealing with more. Resolution, now we're going to have iPad 3. And we're going to have Apple TV. And so you have apps like How Stuff Works, which has, you can't see it here, but does have AirPlay. But start thinking about, you guys are doing video and film, like what you're going to do when Apple comes out with its TV and you want to be on an amazing, huge device with insane resolution. HTML5, we'll probably talk a little bit about that. Helps the promise of being able to make it once and distribute it. Lots of different places, pros and cons. And then there's ways to make apps like PhoneGap, Accelerator, where you know, again, you might have it's a platform that you can use, and you can have an app that you submit to the app stores, but you don't necessarily need to, you know, own the code. Someone who's a web developer can actually create something that's quite beautiful, does the trick, and you know, you're paying a fee each month. And if that works for you, that's great. So that's it. That's my overview. Sorry